Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. Welcome to the Influential You podcast. My name is Josh D'Amigo, and I'm an Influential You consultant, senior program faculty member, and the host of this weekly podcast. At Influential You, we teach you how to launch, grow, and scale your business and amplify your professional influence. Since 2009, we've helped thousands of business owners, executives, and entrepreneurs become more influential, more rewarded, and more you. Over the last 10 years of this podcast, we have built a collection of stories from individuals who found satisfaction through our advanced education and shared their stories through these interviews. This season, we've been revisiting some of those classic tales. We've shared original episodes of the Influential You podcast, hosted by our CEO and co-founder, John Patterson, and you've heard me share some of the key takeaways that I learned from listening to each of the interviews. Today, we're revisiting our first interview with Influential You client, Sean Gillespie. Released in November of 2016, this episode features John's interview with Sean Gillespie, an award-winning abstract sculpturist whose studio is in Denver, Colorado. We would all like to think that everyone's world revolves around ours, but in truth, people's worlds revolve around them. People are generally indifferent to our aim, and it's our job to wake their indifference to our aims. I think you'll like how Sean used this principle to his advantage through his business. During this episode, you'll hear references to influence ecology, the original name for our organization, which is another way of saying you are the company you keep, and that is still a big part of what we teach to our clients and our teams today. Enjoy this episode, and I'll see you on the other side.
Sean, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Tell us about your work and you.
Well, I create abstract contemporary pieces in wood and metal out of my home studio in Denver, Colorado. I started business in 2007. And as you said, I have corporate and private installations all over the US and Canada. And I'm really appreciative and proud to be making my living doing that. It's a very competitive and challenging field.
Absolutely is. My first company right after college was in woodworking and in the arts. I had a furniture design company for 4 or 5 years. And yes, it is a challenging industry. Absolutely. Well, I think what I'd love to do is I want to start with that question, how do you make a living as an artist? I don't know about your childhood, but my childhood, and in many cases, you would hear people say, you can't make a living as an artist. Don't do that. Be in business. What kind of experience did you have growing up, and what were you told, and how did you end up where you are?
Well, I was fortunate or unfortunate, however you like to think of it, but I had hippie parents, so they were very encouraging about the artist path. My dad was kind of a frustrated artist, and my mom was a musician, and so there was some backing for that. They were pretty supportive, but it was always kind of in the background. Well, if you're going to go do art, then just go do it. Don't go to school for it. Go do it. And then always have a backup. Have something that we're actually going to make money at. So even though they were encouraging, it was very clear that they were going to kind of humor me until I learned how the world really was. That was how I grew up.
Were they artists themselves?
Yeah. My dad was a painter. I actually have some of his pieces here at the house. And, my mom was in a jug band of all things when I was growing up. So they had a string bass, mandolins. And so, I grew up around music and art. No shock that I'm doing this now.
That's totally great. And in your upbringing, they said, don't go to school. Just if you're going to do it, do it. So then did you not go to school? What happened around that?
I got some art scholarships. I kind of proved myself a bit so they could breathe a little bit easier, because I was getting some financial help through, through different scholarships and things. But really, I was just trying to figure out a way to make a living doing art and being creative. So I settled on graphic design, computer imaging. So there was a lot going on with animation, and it was just kind of a budding new field. So I really wanted to go into that because I thought that was a way I could be creative and still make a living. The only problem with graphic design is, although I was good at it, I was absolutely bored out of my mind doing graphic design. At the end of the day, you'd end up with this nicely designed piece of paper with a little mark on it that was, distinctive, but yet it was just flat and 2D, and it was just really boring to me. It didn't engage me. And plus, I was sitting in front of a computer all day long. It was just way too much kind of just sitting and pontificating. And I always had this sense I was kind of hiding behind my clients. Like I had something to say, but really I was just trying to hide myself and say what they wanted said. So I was trying to figure out something that would work for my clients. And it just kind of always felt like I had something else that I wanted to say, but I was kind of hiding out.
That's an interesting way to say that. I'm going to get in trouble for saying interesting.
Sweet.
Well, it is interesting to me because I didn't know that part of your journey. Did you find your own voice then in some way? And if so, how?
Yeah, I was bored stiff as a graphic designer. I had one of the coveted jobs in working for American Greetings in their lettering design department when I was just getting out of school. The Queen of England's like lettering designer, was working across the cubicle and like that kind of caliber of people. And I was just, again, I was just miserable, but it was the job that everybody wanted. So I just really thought I should be happy with it. But I just knew that there was more kind of going on out there. I quit that job to everyone's dismay and kind of went around the country kind of looking for what else was out there. So, I spent a lot of time on the coasts and, eventually kind of ended up in Colorado, just kind of searching for what that thing was going to be that was going to light me up. And it ended up being a woodworking class that a friend of mine said, hey, do you want to take this woodworking class for fun? And I was like, sure, what the heck, let's do it. And from day one, I was absolutely hooked. I mean, we got the big machines, you got the noise, you got, three-dimensionality, you got this great material to work with. There's just this like sights and sounds and smells, like it was all there. And it was just so clear to me what was missing was just like using my hands, moving around. It was just such an engaging endeavor and one that felt like it just had no end to the depth of kind of what you could discover around it. It was really engaging.
I think that's really descriptive of your work as I've seen it. You have a mix of different kinds of materials. Everything is very tactile. I don't know if your work is meant to be touched, but gosh, you kind of want to.
Yes, absolutely.
Some of it looks just, you've got wood that's just delicious looking, or certain ways in which wood is treated, which may be rough or kind of sort of organic looking or spongy or whatever the case. And then you got metals, and then you got things that are either shiny and clean and crisp or something that looks a little rugged, and you've got patina, and it's a lovely mix of the senses. It just sounds like that what you wanted to experience while creating the art is also what one experiences and experiencing the art. Anything you want to say about that?
It was kind of another part of growing up. I grew up in Ohio, so it was like in the heart of Amish country, and everything in Ohio was oak. So if it was wood, it was oak. If it was furniture is oak. If it was toys, it was oak. It was just like, I just thought wood was pretty much synonymous with oak. And when I started woodworking, there was just this explosion of colors and textures and figure, and there was so much expression there, such a depth of visual stimulus in wood. And it was just so dead when I was growing up. I was like, this shall not be. People must know about this. That was really the impetus. I made furniture originally, but really the impetus for the sculptural stuff was just your furniture gets covered over by magazines, right? And stuff and effluvia. And so it's just to feature this on the wall, I thought it was just to give it its real true dignity, to really feature it and feature the absolutely exquisite beauty of nature and just kind of what was possible there.
Well, and it's very clear that you've succeeded in that way. I mean, looking at the artwork on your website, and that was the first time I experienced, I was kind of taken aback. Sometimes someone that says, yeah, I'm an artist, or yeah, I'm a musician, and then you hear their work or see their work, you have to go, oh, that's really great.
It's a relief when you actually like it.
And not only do I like it, but I really love it. I think you do incredible work. And obviously, your awards and everything else.
Thank you.
Demonstrate that as well. It's great work. All right. Well, let's talk about you as a businessman. And you obviously began studying with influence ecology some time ago. One of the quotes that I've heard you say in our film is something like, when I first started here, I found out that it was mathematically impossible to reach my aims. And if I kept doing what I was doing, I just wasn't going to get there.
Yes.
So it sounds like that revelation came quite early on. Any other early revelations about what you were doing when you first started studying with influence ecology?
I mean, along the same lines was just, one of the things that influence ecology covers is there's very objective and subjective kinds of personalities. And my wife is, by default, my business partner. And it was just one of those things that was a constant thread in our marriage was how the business was going and was it going to be successful. And I just kept kind of being a subjective type person and have a lot of ideas. And she's very grounded and objective. I just always thought she was not supportive of my ideas. And so when those mathematical things came up, just like, well, I wonder if we're actually going to be able to do this, or what do we need to do in order to have this consistently work over time? I would have great ideas and she would just not be moved by those great ideas. One of the things that I learned was through this ecology is to be able to articulate objectively how I'm going to do that. Like all she wanted to know was, okay, how is this going to happen?
Yeah.
And truth be told, I didn't know. That was the thing. I had the ideas, but they weren't proven. And she kept pointing to that. So she wasn't killing my great idea. And so not only did I start to respect her opinion and her point of view, but I also started to see it as the contribution that it was. If I could actually articulate things to her, like, well, here's how we're going to do it. I do this many shows. I'm going to do this many follow calls a week, real boots on the ground kind of stuff. Then she was happy. And that was really what I was, what so much of what my life was about, right? I was trying to make my wife happy. So this was able to communicate something real to her. And then I was able to go and execute on that. It really helped not only my experience of the business, but also the experience of us as partners and kind of default business people.
All right. Well, that is just way too good. I'm going to spend a moment there because you've just described something that is an aspect of every transaction that goes well and what's often missing when it doesn't. So let's first ask, what personality do you identify with and what is it that you think she is?
I identify with the personality inventor, and I believe that she is a judge.
All right, good. So as we teach you, the inventor is the idea person and the judge is the assessment person, or the person. One of the ways I like to say it is the judge is always saying, well, let me tell you what you should have done. And the inventor has grand and lofty ideas. So oftentimes what we find in a transaction is that an inventor will often have an idea and then go to work. And as we teach it, that means they skip certain steps and
everything else.
And everything else, right? So they skip all the other steps. And what they end up doing in skipping other steps is they don't do something that is so critical. And that is that they don't often stop and then get other people in the same world that they are in. In other words, they don't take the time to have a meeting of the minds with the people around them to get them on the same page, to get them going in the same direction, to get their buy-in. They just assume their ideas are great and everyone should get on board. And then they're upset when people don't. In fact, if you're typically like most inventors, Sean, you may have spent a life wondering why you have to hide your good ideas from people because they're just about to take them down.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
So it sounds like then you provided the missing piece, which is you're having a meeting of the minds with her, but you're not only having a meeting of the minds with her, generally speaking, you're having a meeting of the minds with her in the way that matters to her, which is the how and all of that. It's a great example. I love that you talked about that because if you're in business with someone or you're working with someone on a project or you're working with someone in a transaction, it's all the same. Have a meeting of the minds before you go into work, before you begin to take the actions to produce what you've both committed to. So anything else about all that that's just great?
Yeah, it's just one of the fabulous things about this education is it's something that I wouldn't even have looked at as being connected. I mean, it's kind of obvious that we're business partners and stuff, but our relationship is distinct from the business, which is distinct from career, which is distinct. It's like I had all these little compartments for different things. And one of the things here is that there's just a whole. There's a whole of my life. And I can't really mess with one thing over here without changing something else over here. So how do you take into account this whole big picture life, including health and work and relationships, like all of it such that it's all working together? because I would trash my relationship with my wife in favor of getting a bunch of money coming in. Or I would trash my health because I'm driving across the country really fast to get to a show. Or I really had it like these little compartments. And when I actually had to look at all these things together and be responsible for all of them together, then it's like, oh, well, of course, it's almost like, well, duh, of course they're linked. But how I was actually going to deal with all that stuff was just always a mystery to me. But in here, you get a great kind of course of study that allows you to really understand how all these things not only are linked, but how you can impact them. And the thing with my wife is just something I just thought was just going to be that way forever. Like she was going to kill my ideas, let me know how I did, and I was going to be the one that's always out there in front taking the bullets. And that's just not the way, that's not an accurate picture of the way it was. And I just didn't know that.
And just thinking about people who spend a lifetime thinking their parents are trying to shoot them down, or their business partners are trying to shoot them down, or someone's trying to shoot them down, when all that's missing is it's more of an absence of the time taken to offer a meeting of the minds, to, as we might say, to present to another person in a way that they get it, what it is that you're inviting them to consider as a transaction. That's so great.
Well, it carries over directly then to, my offer in the marketplace, right? If I'm talking to someone about sculpture and they're a certain personality type, and I don't know that, then I'm actually not talking to them in a way that really makes a difference for them. So I don't even know if that's a prospective client or not, because I can't qualify them. They can't qualify me because we're not even on the same page. So I just shudder to think how much business I've lost in the past just because I haven't known really how to talk to people about what it is that I was doing. I mean, I knew how to talk to other people that were like me, but that's a very small percentage of the population. I really needed to understand how to talk to the different personality profiles and the different styles of communicating to really get across what I was doing, which is just so key to being an artist and when selling art. Just because even if they're not interested, people leave like, wow, I was really heard and I really know what this guy has to offer. And I just don't want that right now. Or yeah, like, let's go. And just being really able to effectively communicate.
And so it sounds like then before you started studying with us, the relationship with your wife might have been strained and sometimes tenuous, probably resentments building up on both sides for your inability to understand the world view of the other one. And how is it now? How do you guys communicate now? How is your relationship now?
That was just so well summed up. That was really well said. Yeah, that was it. And I was just living like that was going to continue. And now I keep really detailed records, and I can tell you where every cent is going. And she can see at any moment where every cent is going. We have monthly meetings for, just kind of like, what our goals are together, how we're going to get there. It's just, man, being able to talk to somebody in their own language and really let them know that you've got their back and that they're safe. Like, her biggest thing is just, am I safe? Is this going to work out? Is this secure? And I'm just like, what? Who cares about security? Let's roll, And to be able to take the time to make sure she's taken care of, and then let's roll, it makes such a difference, because then I know she's there. I'm not, doing it by myself either. Like, she's on board. Like, no kidding. Before, she was just like on board because, well, you're my husband. What am I going to do? But no, she's really on board. Like, okay, this is making a difference. This is making a real difference in the way that you transact, how you operate around shows, how you operate around customers, how you operate just on the day-to-day emails and whatnot. I mean, she sees the difference, and it allows her to relax, which allows me to relax, which we can both do our best thinking and really make stuff happen.
That's so great. I love that that's happened. It makes me happy. Big smile on my face. All right. Well,
Yeah.
I want to ask you one other question about that, then I want to go in a different direction.
Sure.
One of the opportunities I love about speaking with you is you're a one-man shop, right? And we have a lot of people who their business starts as a one-man shop, or it stays a one-man shop for whatever reason that might be. And that's actually perfect and all of that. And one of the things your story illustrates is having another around you or others around you, and that you and your wife seem to complement one another quite well in terms of your subjective nature and her objective nature. What kind of support how have you allowed her objectivity to support you?
Yeah, that's great. Well, first thing I had to admit to myself was that my ideas were untested. So her doubt about them was not unfounded. But in order to test that, she has some really good ideas about how to judge how these numbers are, or have you started that retirement account yet? Or it's like a lot of the things that seemed like they were pestering me before now are, hey, this is the things that we need to make sure we keep an eye on to make sure that the business continues the way we want it to, and that we're going to reach our aims and our goals together. So it's just, she is an incredible grounding force. Like if I can run something by her and she doesn't poke a hole in it, I cannot tell you the joy that I have in my heart for, because it means I've thought about it. It not only passed all my checks and balances, but it passed her checks and balances. I know I'm on to gold. That was one of the things when I started making enough money to quit my day job, do the artwork full time. And she was aligned. It was one of the best days of my life, right? There's still a lot of transition to do, but it was proof to her and inside of all her security needs and everything that, yes, this is a viable way to go. It continues to that way to this day. It's like when she's okay with something, then I know it's gold. And if she's not okay with something, I got more work to do.
We will be right back with the rest of Sean's story. But first, a reminder that the Influential You podcast is brought to you by Thrive, Influential You's self-guided training. Thrive is a professional self-development program that lets you learn at your own pace. Thrive members enjoy weekly live e-coaching sessions and an ever-expanding library of exclusive video lessons taught by our faculty, consultants, and industry experts. Sign up today and use promo code 30days to get a Thrive self-guided training subscription free for 30 days. That's coupon code 30DAYS. For links or to find out more, you can click the link in the show notes for this podcast, or in the US or Canada, you can text the word Thrive to 805-262-9008. And we'll send you the registration link right to your mobile phone. Again, text the word Thrive to 805-262-9008, and you can cancel at any time. Now back to the interview.
All right, let's talk about your business. And
Yeah.
over the last few years, how have you taken yourself from a guy that's, as you said, haven't yet quit your day job to where you are now? What did you learn and how did that happen?
The quitting of the day job happened before Fluent Psychology started, but it was the quitting of the day job has been an ongoing test for me. So that's one of the reasons I was seeking out something, because I knew there were things that I didn't know that I needed to know, but I didn't even know what those were. It was just like one of those things. Just there's so much out there. There's so much hitting you all the time. There's so many new books. There's no new fad. Be like Apple, whatever the new thing is, right? I really had no idea what to do. Luckily, I was invited by one of the members to check this thing out, and it was exactly the fit that I was looking for, because you guys had done all the vetting of the books. You guys had done the assembling of the knowledge. You guys had done the set up the practices, the consequential environment, everything that I needed in order to, really make this a viable go. There's plenty of doubts that I had when I quit, went full time doing this. And I would just throw everything against the wall and see what stuck. But that's a really bad long-term plan. It's like, it has no long-term viability. So actually having the tools to be able to determine, okay, this is working. Okay, this is where the profits are going to be the easiest to obtain. This is some low-cost clients here. This is the place to go. Like all those tests for all my great knowledge, I had no structure for that. I had no way to find out why what I was doing was working or not working.
And for you personally, then, what did you discover about your own naivete, or perhaps So what did you discover about your own naivete as a business person?
The biggest thing was I had prospective clients as clients. In my head, they were like a safety net, or they hadn't made any commitments to me and stuff, but they were follow-ups that I could do. So the things that I could do were like, oh, well, I've always got that. Right? So it was like a way to not be in action, or a way not to find out if they were actually good, solid follow-ups and were actually interested, or whether they were just kind of good in my mind. So I got really accurate about getting into reality about, okay, who's actually ready to go, who is just saying that they're ready to go, who's not ready yet. I had just really given myself this fantasy land of business that was not grounded in any kind of reality, or it just wasn't grounded in reality.
Yeah.
But it made me feel comfortable. It made me feel safe. So it was just like this desperation hiding as a business plan. And when I really saw the stinging nature of that, that this was just not a viable way to go, it was just like, oh, I can actually see where these people are and move them through very quickly. And if they're not interested, I actually have time to get on to other people.
Yeah.
It was just such a revelation for me. Moving people through this transaction cycle really quickly either completed the transaction and earned me money, or got, thank you very much, and I'll follow up with you in a couple months. But I knew exactly where I stood, and then I had plenty of energy and focus left to be able to find new people, or to try this show, or to study whether this show was even going to be viable or not. It was just like I had a lot more freedom moving people through quickly than the fake freedom, or the pretend freedom I had, just kind of feeling like, well, I got 10 people that I could call today, but I'm going to go have some Doritos and sit on the couch kind of thing.
It sounds like there's a lot of ways that you stopped lying to yourself. I'll say it that way because I think it's quite clean. A lot of ways that you stopped lying to yourself about what might happen or could happen.
Yes.
And did some accurate thinking, began to move to transact for things happening the way you wanted them to happen.
Yes. I mean, that was really well said. It's like what could happen or might happen was what was going to happen to me. I had no distinction between those things. It was just like, it might happen it was going to happen. And then I'd be really puzzled when it didn't work out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Very good. So then in the fundamentals of transaction program and the work that we do here, you start to think accurately about those things. You start to transact in accordance with your aims, which are now clear and certain and so forth. What did you begin to discover next about yourself as a business person, as an artist?
I've always really prided myself on being able to articulate what I was trying to do with my art, and then put that into a piece of wood and metal, which when itself doesn't have necessarily the soul that I tried to put into it. And then to have other people see it. Like, I knew those were the main three things, right? So articulate what I wanted, put it into the work, and then have other people see it in the work without me having to tell them. The only problem in that is it's great from an art perspective, but it's horrible for a sales plan, right? Waiting for people to realize the beauty in something and give me money was not a viable plan. All artists think, well, they're just going to be so struck by the beauty of it. They're going to come in, they're going to leave a pile of money, and they're going to walk out, and everybody will be happy, right? But the problem with that is there's way too many things pulling on people's sleeves at any given moment. And to me, it was a real revelation to realize I was competing with Apple. I was competing with family. I was competing with cars and watches and groceries. And I mean, it's like literally everything is pulling on people all the time. And there's a limited resource there. So why me? Why should they bother to look at this piece? Why should they bother to take it home? Why should they bother to hang it? And so I really started to have to deal with, how am I going to interrupt people's kind of ordinary lives enough that they actually realize what I'm doing? My art's not for everybody, but the people that it is for, I need to make sure that they know what it is that I'm doing, so they can actually really make a choice on whether it's going to serve them and their environment or whatever it is that they want to do. So I really had to start articulating what it was that I was doing in a way that was more in people's face, I think is the way to say it. I think Kirkland said once the timid salesmen have skinny kids. That really stuck with me. Timid salesmen have skinny kids. And I was just, and I was very timid salesman because I felt like it's bragging, right? It's bragging. It's being too out there. It's like nobody wants to hear somebody talking about their art. That's all they want to hear. They want to know what they're looking at. They want to know why they care. They want to know why I'm in this really high-end show. Like, what is it that, this guy is doing with this stuff? I mean, some people get it right away, but, other people, they really do need to be educated in that moment. So I really had to see that the environment is one of those things that I really impact. And that's the place where I had to go to work on telling people what kind of difference that this was going to make in their environment.
Really good. So you're pointing to how you might agitate or excite someone's indifference. And you wrote in your notes to me, you said most people are indifferent to what you do.
Yeah.
And you said that's different than not caring.
Yes.
Right? You don't mean indifference as in they don't care. And we could talk about whether or not they care or not. But it sounds like you accepted that people are indifferent. And I think this is where I'd like to take this conversation next, because it is an important one for all entrepreneurs, I'd say, for business people. But I think it's something for us to consider generally if we are going to succeed at transacting powerfully, if we're going to develop our transactional competence, we're going to have to accept indifference. I'd like to know in your first introduction to indifference as a concept, what did you go through? Did you accept indifference right away? Did you resist that people were indifferent? Did you think otherwise? What'd you go through?
Well, it's so great because initially, like going to a show, putting your stuff up on the wall, which is the best you got within you, right? The best stuff you could come up with is up there on the wall. It's synonymous with you, your point of view, your lifestyle, and to watch people just kind of shuffle by, just hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people just shuffle by. it's
and your soul is hanging out for all to see.
Yes.
And honor,
and just the wilting power of that over time, and then you multiply that by like a 3-4 day show.
Yeah,
it's tough. And it's not for the faint of heart. It just really isn't. In the beginning, I was really powerless. I just couldn't see any way other than to start breaking into song or dancing through the street, or maybe that's a good idea. I don't know. But it's like, I really didn't see how I was going to be able to interrupt that. It's like, if somebody came in and asked me a question, I'd be happy to answer. But just like how to impact that was beyond me. And thank goodness for influence ecology. Because now I have so many different ways to try to interact with people and see if they're actually interested in what I'm talking about and what I have to offer.
So I loved your visual example of thousands of people just walking by and not even giving a glance. It's sort of a horrific example of it is not for the faint of heart.
No.
So if we're going to talk about indifference and some of the things that we teach about that, one thing we notice is that oftentimes people take indifference personally, as if indifference is an attack, or if I'm indifferent, it means I don't care, or if I'm indifferent, it means that I'm cold or something else. Anything else that you can say about your own study of indifference or your own acceptance of indifference as a phenomenon?
Yeah, I'd say there's definitely a piece I have around indifference now that it's just what I expect. So it's not surprising anymore. It's not disarming. But now it's just like, oh, of course. How else do we go out and survive in the current environment with everything kind of coming at us, right? If we paid attention to every single offer all the time, I mean, we'd be in the hospital.
And we'd weigh 3,000 pounds and yeah.
Exactly. Also, it really is kind of up to me, and I look at it more now like they're sleepy, they're asleep, right? So it's just, how do I get them engaged to just even see if it's appropriate to do business together?
And how have you been doing that?
Well, I mean, if I'm talking to business leaders or business owners, and You wouldn't leave a blank page on your website, right? But you got a blank wall sitting right there in your front office. I mean, this is a chance to demonstrate your identity without having to say a word. Put away the motivational posters. You're missing what really inspires people. I would never have said that before. Never. Like that would, I'd wait and answer questions politely or whatever, but it's like I study the environment. We're an animal in the environment. If you change the environment, you change the animal. So what's in your home? What's hanging in your home? Are they things, objects of distinction that move you, that bring the best out of you? It's like when the first Macs, when the Macs came out and stuff, I wanted to do stuff that was worthy of the Mac. It pulled me forward.
Yeah.
Right. So it's just like, what pulls you forward in your life? Are you surrounded by those objects? Or are you just kind of surviving something in your environment?
All right. Well, this is too good because it's obvious to me that you've taken the time to stop and think about how you might agitate the indifference, how you might produce a breakdown, as we talk about it, how you might produce a breakdown that has someone say, I should find out about that. And then you took the time to craft ways that you might speak to that. Anything you want to say about that experience, that process, what you went through?
Yeah, it was a struggle. It's like I'm somewhat outward with people, but that's taken a lot of practice. I tend to be a lone wolf and a very private person. So, but I practiced a lot and, started to get good at least talking to people, but there was still a kind of a big threat. There was still a big threat there. And now kind of armed with more of a script or more of a group of things or a group of points that I can use to hit on when I'm, talking with people, I'm really freed up. And it's actually fun to play with people. It's fun to kind of poke them. And one of the things that I got some great coaching on, ask people if they've got expensive termites they're trying to feed. I do all this woodwork and stuff. You're just really playing with people and making them laugh. It's like, these are beautiful. How many can I wrap up for you? I got plenty of bubble wrap. Just ways to kind of like, well, I guess I really could take that home. Like people are left with, I really could take that home. Because I don't think most people even know that the stuff that they're seeing is for sale and that they could actually have it. That's how asleep people are. Like they just don't even know. It's like a museum or something. And like, no, you could have this. If this is exciting and inspiring to you, take it home. Do you love life? Celebrate it.
Is it safe to say that you are experimenting a bit with the canvas of our social environment?
Oh, absolutely. And I mean, but the thing is that it's fun. If you would have told me it would be fun to kind of play with people and sell art, and I could bring the same creativity that I use for the artwork to a conversation about purchasing the artwork, I would just say you're crazy. That's two separate things. Like I have to go and get an MBA in business or something first, and then I can, have a conversation about business. It's like, no, I can actually bring that juice, that stuff that I love to do anyway, to a conversation, to a spreadsheet, for goodness sake, to a corporate client. That fun, they want it. They want somebody to wake them up. They want what you got. You just got to let them know what it is.
Very, very great. All right. Is there anything else that you would like to say? Any soapbox and anything else?
Don't necessarily buy into the starving artist conversation. And if you're an artist or a creative person out there, it's just get the specific help that you need, because it's totally viable to sell your works, to be creative, to live a lifestyle that you want to live, not having to compromise that lifestyle. It's totally possible. And it's just, you need the help. And Influence Ecology is the place where I found exactly the help I needed at exactly the right time. Yeah. So it's totally possible. And just don't stop.
All right. With that, Sean, thank you so very, very much for what you provided today. I enjoyed this very much.
Thank you, John. And thanks for the education.
You are welcome. As I promised, in today's talk, we listen in on a membership webinar to hear Kirkland Tibbles explain the nature of indifference and how we might navigate an indifferent marketplace.
Human beings are always valuing and ranking something constantly. And when you're indifferent to it, it just simply means that you see no value. We don't take a step, says Simmel, without evaluating and ranking every move of that step, every single thing about it. We don't take a step without first evaluating, ordering, and ranking that step in terms of its importance. That means that we rank things as to their importance or their value. Therefore, we attend to those things that have value, and we are indifferent to those that do not. Therefore, we produce a negative value with indifference. When you demonstrate indifference, what you are saying is it holds no value. We talk about if you really want to demonstrate your authority and power in the transactions that are important to you, ask yourself this question. If you remove your help, if you take yourself out of that transaction, does it do any harm? Does it make any difference? Or would everyone who's engaged in that transaction be left indifferent one way or the other? And there's your answer. Would it make any difference in the organizations where you participate if you were there or not? Really make any difference? If it does, you can start to measure your value because people have ranked it. They've evaluated and they see value in it. But if they're indifferent to you, all it means is not that they don't care about you, it just holds no value. We've had people who have come to terms with their own indifference and had biological reactions to it, called up and said, I had to pull over when it hit me after an open training session how indifferent I am to my own concerns, much less the concerns of others.
Yeah, let's talk about that for a second, because I think that's one of the things that I want to make sure that we confront here. It's been my experience that people often don't actually accept the indifference in the marketplace. They don't accept it. They tend to say, well, no, people do care. People really do. Or, well, my mother cares. She's not indifferent to me. Or people at work, they care about me. And they don't relate to the others of the world as indifferent. They don't relate to, in some cases, the weather as indifferent or nature as indifferent. I don't remember the last time that I argued with gravity. I'm fine with that. I accept. but indifference? Now hold on.
Well, there's something I think to point to contextually here, and this might ease the pain for folks who have trouble with this conversation. If you just relate to those places in your life that are the most important, that have great value, that carry some significance and importance with you, and you are attempting to engage your environment and no one gives a rat's ass, that comes face to face, you come face to face with indifference. And it's not that they don't care. It's different from caring. It holds no value. And it is incumbent upon you to wake up to the fact that if you are going to get their attention, you're going to have to produce that narrative of value. You're going to have to agitate the environment. Sometimes it means agitating it a lot. It means sometimes you're going to have to go out of your way. And when you're just unwilling to go out of your way, you are starting to come to terms with your own indifference.
Can you say more about not caring versus indifference?
Yeah. I know people who really care about animals, but they take no action. I know people who care about organizations or about particular conditions of life, but there's no recognition of that in any objective way. They're just simply unwilling to act. And they will continue to be unwilling to act until the environment or some other situation produces the opportunity or threat for them to do so. If I go down a list of concerns in life, do you care about global warming? Do you care about space trash? To go down a long list of things that people who I know personally can give you all kinds of evidence that you ought to be concerned about this. You go see a documentary or you talk to someone who is about a cause. You care about your financial future. but you're indifferent to it if you're unwilling to transact to satisfy it or to engage it. You're just simply indifferent to it. I experiment with this all the time. When I finished my presidency of a Toastmasters organization during my term, I sent everyone in the club a handwritten thank you note with something in the note specific to what I was grateful for. And in the 80-plus year history of this organization, two guys have been in that club over 40 years. But there's no evidence that anybody ever did that before. And these two guys have been there forever, were impacted, not the fact that I took the time to do it, but that it struck a nerve of difference that it made to take that action. It wasn't just me saying thank you like most adults would. It's going beyond what an adult would do, and it's moving ambitiously. Now, why did I do that? First and foremost, I am truly grateful. And I can stand at the lectern and I can thank them earnestly. But when they got a handwritten thank you note, they got it. I am not indifferent to the help and their value, and they felt valued. They had an objective reason to concern themselves with that act. And the number of people who have brought that up since then, it was months ago, the stories that are told expand on the environment of that club. People are doing that more. You started something with that thing you did, they'll say. Listen, I did that on purpose for a number of reasons to satisfy conditions of life. First and foremost, it works. And that's a practice of letting people know I am not indifferent to the concerns of this club and your value in it. Go ahead, John.
Well, I think one of the reasons that we're pointing to indifference as a form of naivete is because we sometimes don't acknowledge that we have grown indifferent. We sometimes don't acknowledge that we are indifferent to begin with. We sometimes don't acknowledge that others are indifferent. So we tend to live in a world where, in my view, people assume that indifference isn't occurring, or perhaps they dismiss it in some way. And in your example of your Toastmasters club and offering an acknowledgement, sending a card and the like, that was your not moving with indifference to the concern and care and the acknowledgement and gratitude that you wanted to express. You knew that what was likely and probable was that people would leave and there'd be an indifferent, there would be indifference to the acknowledgement of that gratitude. And so you took the time to express it. You took the time to move as an ambitious adult. So it is a kind of naivete. We do grow indifferent. It is natural. One of the things that you and I have to deal with as biological critters is that over time, we stop seeing the art on our walls. We can walk down the street. We don't expect tigers to jump out. We don't expect people to leap out of bushes and attack us. We tend to live in a pretty unagitated state most of the time. And we tend to like it that way. We tend to buy lots of products to make sure that we stay in a state of peaceful bliss. And don't often attend to producing a kind of agitation or excitement in the environments in which we live. We're used to growing indifferent. But I think what we want to point out here is that you could say that it's naive to approach the world, to approach the marketplace, and to approach one another with the kind of indifference that's automatic, that's just sort of there anyway. And in Kirkland, your example again, you didn't. You took action to move in a different direction altogether.
Well, there's also ways to demonstrate one's commitments by calling out indifference on a regular basis. The thing that we must learn how to do if we're going to transact beyond the norm, I'll call it, beyond the the basic and fundamental comforts of life, if you have a lofty aim in any condition of life, whether it's your own money or it's your legacy, if it's some concern that you have, it will require you paying attention in a way that is uncommon. You're coming to terms with your own ignorance, your naivete, your own indifference, your naivete, your lack of specialized knowledge, naivete, the language required to produce a particular narrative, your naivete. The fact that you may be running around with an outward expression that you have some concept of indifference and you may accept generally, but that's not how you behave. You behave as though people still owe you something. Not in a highly expressive way, but you just expect that human beings are going to somehow come around. Naivete. Yeah, news for you. It would be really good as an exercise for you to see just how far you can go in observing and accepting the level of naivete and indifference that exists in the world today. People are not going to vote for your causes because they ought to see that for themselves. They're going to vote based on their own concern. And if you can't demonstrate to another human being that they ought to take an act, do a thing, accept an offer, duck, run, because there is threat involved if they don't, because you are unwilling to learn how to utilize the narratives and the weapons of influence, well, good luck.
If you'd like to know more about us, you can go to influentialu.global and explore our courses, consulting, and conferences. We offer a 4-year curriculum for those seeking an advanced experience. However, if you're brand new to Influential You, we recommend you start with Thrive. It's our self-guided training. Thrive is a self-guided program that lets you learn at your own pace. Thrive members enjoy weekly live e-coaching sessions and an ever-expanding library of exclusive video lessons with our faculty, thought leaders, and industry experts. You'll get proven proprietary tools to accurately assess your career and develop a realistic strategy to achieve your aims faster. Your membership also includes chat access to faculty, plus discounts to our transformative conferences. Sign up today and use promo code 30DAYS for a free 30-day test drive of Influential You's Thrive program. That code, 30 days, and you can cancel at any time. Thank you so much for tuning in today. You'll find new episodes on our website, Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube, so you may easily share this podcast with others. You can also subscribe on iTunes, Stitcher, or any place that you listen to quality podcasts. Next week on the Influential You podcast, we have Joanna Bergraff, an esteemed alumni and early member at Influential You, and how the worst advice you could ever tell someone is to follow their passion. Are you intrigued? Well, you'll need to join us next week to find out why. You may check our show notes for links to connect with our guests, plus links to websites, books, or special downloads we talked about on today's episode. This season's podcasts were made possible by the Influential You staff, faculty, and our wonderful members all around the world, with a special thanks to our executive producer, Tyson Crandall, Joey Anderly, our in-studio producer. Thank you, Joey. With contributions from John Patterson, Michael Teehee, Daryl Anderly, Paul West, and Liz Smiley, and a special thanks to our guest, Sean Gillespie. The Influential You podcast is produced in Ventura, California. This episode was originally recorded in November of 2016. The podcast theme is by Chris Standring, entitled Fast Train to Everywhere. And if you haven't yet offered a rating or review, I ask that you take a moment to go to iTunes or your podcast app and let us know what you think. This helps us more than you know. We'll see you next time on the Influential You podcast.